Legal scrutiny over incidents from before, during and after former US President Donald Trump's term in office continues to plague him. Trump has now been indicted in 4 separate criminal cases, with the latest hammer being Georgia. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis in Georgia indicted Trump with an alleged scheme to overturn his 2020 loss in the state. Now, the indictment contains 41 total counts across all of the 19 defendants, including 13 counts against Donald Trump himself. Fani Willis's case introduces another variable and another jurisdiction in Trump's ongoing effort to stay out of prison. Although Trump's Georgia indictment dampens his attempts at staying in power, analysts are saying it is unlikely to have an immediate effect on the former president's push for the Republican Party's 2024 nomination. However, it is important to note that Georgia's state RICO law allows prosecutors to pull an array of conduct, including activities that took place outside of Georgia but may have been part of a broad conspiracy into their indictments. Meanwhile, as Trump continues to blatantly deny these charges against him, it will be interesting to watch the effects that the Georgia indictment has on his efforts of getting re-elected. Let me also inform you that several political pundits have in fact gone on to say that this could be the most serious legal indictment for Donald Trump. We'll delve deeper into that, but first up is a report.
The indictment brings felony charges against Donald John Trump.
Former U.S. President Donald Trump has until noon next Friday to surrender to authorities in Atlanta, Georgia. He was hit with criminal charges for a 4th time on Monday, when a Georgia grand jury issued a criminal indictment accusing him of attempting to illegally overturn his 2020 election loss to Democrat Joe Biden. The indictment listed Trump and 18 others as defendants, including associates Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, along with a total of 41 criminal counts. It was all part of a sweeping case brought by Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis.
Every individual charged in the indictment is charged with 1 count of violating Georgia's Racketeer, Influenced, and Corrupt Organizations Act through participation in a criminal enterprise in Fulton County, Georgia, and elsewhere to accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office beginning on January 20th, 21.
Racketeering is used to target members of organized crime groups and carries a penalty of up to 20 years in prison. Lawyers for those named either declined to comment or did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Trump has previously denied any wrongdoing and accused Willis of being politically motivated, criticisms she rejected on Monday.
I make decisions in this office based on the facts and the law. The law is completely nonpartisan. That's how decisions are made in every case. We followed the same process. We look at the facts, we look at the law, and we bring charges.
Arrest warrants have been issued for those indicted by the grand jury. Willis said she is giving them an opportunity to voluntarily surrender by noon on August 25th. The case stems from a phone call in January 2021 in which Trump urged Georgia's top election official to find enough votes to reverse his narrow loss in the state. The official declined to do so. A few days later, Trump's supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in an unsuccessful attempt to prevent lawmakers from certifying Biden's victory. The indictment also cites a number of crimes that Trump or his associates allegedly committed, including falsely testifying to lawmakers that election fraud had occurred and urging state officials to violate their oaths of office by altering the election results.
All right, so how significant is going to be the Georgia indictment for Donald Trump and his performance in the upcoming election of 2024? Let's try and dig deeper. And for that, I'm joined in by conservative strategist Amy Tarkanian, who joins me live from the United States. Many thanks to you, Amy, for joining in. Now, after each criminal indictment of former President Donald Trump, pundits have always said something to the effect that this is the worst indictment yet. Many are now saying that Trump's fourth indictment will, in fact, pose the greatest legal risk to him. Do you agree?
Yes, and the reason being is you now have a number of individuals who were so-called co-conspirators or co-defendants. So now there's not just President Trump involved, you have 18 others that have been indicted as well. This has been an over 2-year investigation that has been taking place. And so they have been talking with numerous individuals who have been connected with the numerous scenarios that are included in this indictment. The one that could be left up to interpretation is the phone call that he made to the Secretary of State of Georgia, asking to find roughly 11,700 votes. That could have been either a candidate who was in panic and just talking out loud, or it could have been a candidate who truly was putting the pressure to find these votes to change the outcome. Now, the one area that I believe he's going to find a tough time wiggling out of is the fake elector scheme. And here in the state of Nevada, we are one of 7 states that actually participated in that, unfortunately. So our leadership in the state party, they did present 6 fake electors, and 2 of them were subpoenaed, and they were granted limited immunity. So, you know, that tells you right there that there was coordination to some extent, whether if it was directly with President Trump or President Trump's handlers or the people that he sent off to go and do the dirty work. There's going to be, I think, a lot of communication that's going to come out that will be damning. And then you have the former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, who also has been very silent, but has now requested that this be moved from a state court to a federal court in hopes that they can have a larger juror pool to select from rather than just from Fulton County itself.
Right. Amy, Trump needs Georgia to return to the White House because many in the United States believe that it is Georgia which is the gateway to the White House. And, you know, won't the non-stop indictment coverage wear on the voters who would have otherwise preferred to back Donald Trump? Why is winning Georgia going to be so crucial for Trump? And will the latest indictment what will this mean for Trump's performance in Georgia in 2024?
Sure. Well, in the recent election, you had a candidate that was endorsed by President Trump who ran for Senate, Herschel Walker, who is a very famous athlete. And so it was guessed that he was going to do extremely well, if not win. And he just didn't, he wasn't able to cut it. And so he ended up losing along with a number of other candidates that President Trump had fully endorsed. And so that was a really poor showing in this last election. So I think the fact that you had Herschel Walker lose, you had, you know, former Governor Brian Kemp, he has now taken to X, or formerly known as Twitter, to also point out to President Trump that the election was not stolen. So he's been very vocal about this most recently. And then you still have the former Secretary of State that has stood his ground, saying that, you know, everything was fair and done correctly. And so when you have these elected officials who the citizens have once voted in favor of, I think that's a telltale sign that they are not going to go his direction because they are probably fed up with his nonsense.
That's, in fact, a very interesting point that you've made, Amy. But I also want to ask you about Arizona, which continues to wait and see whether anyone in the Grand Canyon state will be charged in connection with Trump's campaign to overturn the 2020 election. What will Donald Trump's Georgia indictment mean for Arizona?
Sure. Well, I mean, that's another state that's interesting to watch because that was typically a red state. And now you have a Democrat governor, Katie Hobbs. And so you have Katie Hobbs, and then you have 2 Democrat U.S. senators as well. So I think you're now starting to see people wake up to where they're not necessarily voting straight ticket anymore. It's not just because you're registered a Republican or registered a Democrat. People are now looking at the actual individual themselves and to say, who would best represent my thoughts, my values, who would not embarrass our state? You know, that's been a big conversation as well. And who would do the least damage also is in conversation. And so I think that this indictment would continue to hurt the Arizona Republican Party. But when you have candidates like Carrie Lake, who refuse to concede basically and continue to spew the same rhetoric as Donald Trump and those who surround him that are grifters, saying that there's systemic voter fraud and wanting to not just say it out loud, but then actively want to look into voter machines, question the legality of the way that the process is done. I think it's damning to our electoral process, and it puts a bad precedence. It sets a bad precedence, I believe, for future elections.
Right, Amy. To my last question to end with. Polls show that Americans are deeply divided along party lines over Trump's actions in election cases. But his Republican rivals are now arguing that Trump cannot win in a general election when he must compete for votes that go beyond the GOP base. How do you view the standing in the upcoming general election of 2024?
Well, it's very sad because I think we're in a lose-lose situation here. If you even look at polling across the board, and it doesn't matter which polling company you're looking at, the majority of voters do not want a re-election of President Biden or President Trump, and they're exhausted. They're disappointed in both of them to some degree. But still, at the end of the day, I believe if you have a redo of those two individuals, the toxicity of President Trump, the dislike, and I hate to use this word, but people actually have a hatred for President Trump, I think will then put President Biden back in the White House. And it's not necessarily a vote of confidence. It's just a vote against Trump, just like how there was a vote against Hillary Clinton because she was so toxic herself and so disliked. It was literally a vote against Hillary Clinton. And that's what would happen again.